Hello, everyone. This is Cooking with Plants. I'm Kelly Wilson, a registered dietitian here at Trinity Health in Ann Arbor, Michigan. And tonight we have part two of our Using Unique Vegetable series. It is the height of summer produce season. And so we're talking all about how to use some of the veggies that you might find at your local farmer's market or in your CSA box. If you would like to have live captions for this session, you can go ahead and go to the three dots at the top of your screen, select language and speech, and then turn on live captions. If you would like to submit some questions, you can use the Q&A bubbles that you see on that top right-hand side of your screen. And you can also submit any questions to lifestylemedicine@trinity-health.org. Like I said, I'm Kelly Wilson, and for those of you who I haven't had the pleasure of meeting yet, I am a registered dietitian and certified lifestyle medicine practitioner based in Southeast Michigan. If you're not familiar with lifestyle medicine, it is a medical subspecialty that focuses on disease prevention, treatment, and reversal through 6 pillars. We talk about improving dietary patterns through plant-forward foods, and that's a lot of what this class focuses on, but we also talk to patients about moving their bodies regularly, positively managing stress, connecting with other humans, avoiding risky substances, and getting restorative sleep. All 6 of those pillars are the foundation of lifestyle medicine and what helps us prevent, treat, and reverse chronic conditions. When it comes to spending time in the kitchen and developing culinary skills, I really believe that everyone has the ability to cook. You don't have to have fancy training. You don't have to have fancy skills or expensive ingredients to make health promoting food delicious and to make easy, fast meals. And that's a lot of what we focus on in this class. And my hope is this series, or even if you're just watching one of these classes, that you walk away inspired to start adding some of these plant foods to your plate. If this is all new to you, be patient and kind with yourself. Remember that change takes time and practice makes perfect. It's okay if your knife skills need some work right now. That's totally fine. Just practice, 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 and I promise you, they will get better. If some of these foods are unfamiliar to you, that's okay. Start with what you know and adapt from there. And again, remember to focus on progress, not perfection, and to celebrate any win, no matter how small it might seem. If you have never tried tofu before and you decide to give it a go, celebrate that victory for yourself, okay? If you are joining us and you're a Trinity Health colleague, you get points towards keeping your insurance premiums low just for participating in this class or watching the recording. You get 250 points for any class that you participate in. So email that lifestyle medicine at trinity-health.org email address, and we will make sure that you get your points. As always, all of these classes in this series are general nutrition information. So if you have a specific chronic health condition or you were newly diagnosed with a health condition, what I talk about may or may not apply to you. Now, we focus on plant foods and on whole foods, on processed foods in this class series. Most people can benefit from adding these foods into your diet. However, it's always a great idea that you speak with your registered dietitian and your physician before making any drastic nutrition changes, just to make sure it's aligned with your current health conditions. If you need help connecting to a dietitian or to a primary care physician, please feel welcome to email us at that lifestyle medicine at trinity-health.org email address. If you haven't been with us this whole series, this is where we've been. Tonight, like I said, we're focused on unique vegetables, what we're finding at the farmer's market, and how we can use some of that produce. And then you can see some of the classes that we're going to be covering in the coming months. If this video was forwarded to you, feel welcome to scan that QR code that's on the screen, and that's how you can register for the future series and be looped into the emails that contain the recipes and the links to our class resource website. Tonight, we're going to quickly review seasonal eating and some of its benefits, and then we're going to cook through 5 different recipes. We're going to focus on one of my favorite vegetables, which is often a very divisive vegetable, beets. We're going to do an eggplant recipe, and then we're going to do a recipe focused on kohlrabi, because we tend to get a lot of questions about that vegetable. So why are we talking about seasonal eating and local food? One of the main reasons, again, I'm in Southeast Michigan. Michigan is the second most agriculturally diverse state in the country, which may be surprising given that we have winter for about 6 months here. But we grow a lot of diverse produce here. We have a wide range of farmers markets and local farms that have farm subscriptions. And so a lot of people get exposure to a wide range of diverse veggies when they're interacting with those spaces. And I think this class hopefully will help you have some ideas on how to use those veggies. Seasonal eating, if you can shop at a farmer's market or from a local farm, if there's one nearby to you, is a great way to get exposure to new fruits and veggies that you might not see in the grocery store. Oftentimes, that produce that you're getting direct from a local farm is picked at peak ripeness. So not only is it going to taste more delicious, it also is going to have a slightly better nutrient profiles, antioxidant levels and phytonutrients are going to be a little bit higher than something that wasn't picked at peak ripeness and was shipped 2,000 miles across the country. And then, gassed to ripen. So we're getting some flavor benefits. We're getting some nutrition benefits. We're also supporting the local economy when we're purchasing from that small farm. That's a business that's based in our neck of the woods. That's also then turning around and investing in other businesses in our community. If you're looking to find local food near you, if you're in Michigan like me, one of the best resources is Taste the Local Difference. So localdifference.org, they have an online searchable directory where you can type in your zip code. You can filter by, I'm looking for a farmer's market. I'm looking for a farm with a community supported agriculture program, or I'm looking for a restaurant that sources local food. That's a really great tool to help you easily identify some of those options in your community or a community that you might be visiting. Michigan Farmers Market Association also has a great website with some resources on where to find farmers markets specifically. If you're outside of Michigan and you're looking for some options, the National Farmers Market Coalition is a great way to find farmers markets. And then there is a publication company called Edible Communities. They have a print magazine that comes out roughly quarterly in a variety of states and regions across the country. Not every state or every region has one, but a lot do. So that's a great place to go to see if there's one in your community. And they often cover the farms, restaurants, farmers markets that are sourcing and distributing and growing local food. All right, so now let's shift gears and get into the kitchen. Like I said, we've got a handful of recipes, and I want to make sure we have plenty of time to get through them. We're going to talk a little bit about beets. That's our first veggie, and I love beets. Some people think that they're really earthy, and they are, and that is one of the reasons that I love them. They're beautiful. They come in this deep red color. You can also get golden beets. You can get beets that are called chioggia, which are striped. They look like a candy cane when you slice them open. So many different color variations. And beets are naturally really get dense in sugar. Like we have sugar beets, right? So prepared the right way, we can enhance that sweetness, cut down on that earthiness, and hopefully one of these recipes will be one that makes you as much of a beet lover as me. To start, we're gonna, I just wanna show you kind of what this raw beet looks like. So if you look at the cutting board, this is like what I would call a medium-sized red beet, okay? This is the taproot, and this is the end where the leaves, where you can see there's still a few kind of leaves hanging on here. If you can get beets with the greens on them, those greens are delicious sauteed, very much like you would cook spinach or Swiss chard. They've got some of that Swiss chard, a little bit of that like bitterness, earthiness of the Swiss chard. Beets and Swiss chard are technically exactly the same plant. Just the beets had a mutation to make a swollen stem, and the chard is just thicker stemmed leaves. Okay. So you can use those greens. They're high in iron. They're very delicious. We're not using the greens in any of our recipes tonight. We're going to focus on the beet root itself. So when I am working with a beet, you can roast them, you can use them raw, you don't have to cook them. Some people like to boil them or pickle them. There's lots of different applications. We're going to focus on roasting and raw. So to get this beet roasted, all I'm going to do is I'm going to slice off the greens. I'm going to leave the rest of this beet intact and then just scrub it and wash it really well. And then I'm going to place it in a casserole dish or some type of dish with a cover and about a quarter cup of water. And I'm going to put it in a 400-degree oven for about 50 to 60 minutes or until it is really soft. I can pierce it easily with a fork or a knife. Okay, so that takes about that 50 to 60 minutes. And then we get something that looks like this. So can you see the difference between, so this beet right here is nice and dark in color. That's our roasted beet compared to our raw beet, okay? I didn't peel this beet, so that is my next step. In order to be able to use it, I want to peel it. And I like using gloves when I go to peel a beet. Just because they will dye your hands. I mean, this beautiful color is where a lot of the nutrition in the beets are, but it will stay in your hands, and I don't want red hands for the rest of class. So to get this to where I want it for our recipe, which is a roasted beet hummus, I'm going to slice off this taproot, okay, and that goes into my compost. I'm going to slice off this stem end, okay, that also goes into my compost. And then you should just be able to peel with your hands going around. See how that skin just kind of slips right off? And the skin is where a lot of that earthiness and the bitterness is. So getting the skin off can really help cut down on that. And if you remember from our flavor class, other things that we talked about that can help cut down on bitter are umami, so that savoriness. And so things like tomatoes, mushrooms are really high in umami. Miso, so you could roast your beets in some like miso paste dressing, and that would help cut down on some of that earthiness. You can also use acid, so things like citrus juices or vinegars, and then sweet helps cut. So things like some maple syrup or some honey can also pair really nicely with our beets. Okay, so I've got that beet nice and peeled. I don't know if you can see on here that I've got a little bit of a like rough spot in here. So I'm going to just cut that out because I don't want that in our hummus. Okay. And now I'm going to just cut this in half I'll cut it in thirds so it breaks down a little bit easier in our hummus. I just plop that into my food processor. So for our beet hummus, we just need one medium beet that has been roasted. If it's too hot in your kitchen, you don't want to get things steamy, or you don't have the time, one nice time-saving tool, this is not the only brand out there, but this Love Beets brand, they have pre-cooked, I'll show it here as well. They have pre-cooked ready to eat roasted beets that have been peeled for you already. They tend to be a little bit on the smaller side. So for this recipe, you'd probably want to use about 2 or 3 of those love beets. That brand also makes seasoned beets, which are kind of nice. So these are pickled beet slices, again, already cooked. So if you don't want to go through the trouble of roasting them, you do have some options that you can get in the grocery store. All right, so for our hummus, I've got my roasted beet in there. I'm adding a can of chickpeas. Those are drained and rinsed. I've got 2 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil. I've got 4 tablespoons of lemon juice. Again, that's going to help balance out some of the bitterness that's in the beets and the bitterness that's in this tahini. So this tahini is ground sesame seeds, good source of plant-based calcium, really great tool for adding creaminess to dishes without having to have dairy. I've got half of a teaspoon of salt. If you are not using low sodium beans, you could reduce the salt here. Or if you're watching your sodium intake, just omit that. All right, and then we've got 3 cloves of garlic. I just need to peel these. So I'm gonna lay my knife parallel to the cutting board, take the heel of my hand, press it into the heel of the knife as I just gently press down on that clove until I hear it pop. You don't have to slam it. You don't have to press really hard. Just there until you hear it crack. And now I'm gonna just peel. You can also, another tool, instead of just, peeling like with my fingers like I'm doing here, if you have 2 small bowls, you can place the cloves of garlic in the 2 small bowls after you smash them, or in one small bowl, put the other bowl on top of it, hold them really tightly together and just shake, and that friction will help remove the peels. Okay, I also just cut off the stem end, or excuse me, the root end of these little garlic cloves because that's really tough. It won't break down in the food processor, and I don't want that hard chunk in my hummus. Okay, last one here. So our garlic has some anti-inflammatory sulfur compounds. We've got in our beets, we've got some betaine, which is really helpful for our body's methylation processes, which are really critical for pretty much every part of our metabolism. They're also really helpful for, like, methylation is really important for DNA repair and recovery and for our body's natural detoxification pathways. So beets, powerhouse for that, those methyl compounds. Okay, so we've got everything in here. I'm going to turn this on. Okay, we're going to give this a little stir. So I'm just looking for this to be nice and smooth. Whatever consistency you like your hummus, that's what we're going for. So I'm going to let this go a little bit longer. Okay, here we go. That's looking pretty smooth and good to me. So we're gonna stop there. Look at that gorgeous color. This is one of the things that I love the most about beet hummus is it's such a gorgeous purple pink color. It's also a fun thing to make with kids. I think a lot of kids get really surprised and excited about the color of the hummus. And it pretty much just tastes like regular hummus. So you can serve this with veggie sticks. You can put this on a sandwich. You could even thin it out a little bit with some water or some more lemon juice and use it as a dressing if you wanted to. But really, really delicious, very easy way to incorporate some beets. I'm going to reset some things here. and move on to our next recipe. Okay, which is a roasted beet salad. We've got our arugula, which is going to be, so we've got a mix of arugula and spinach. You could use just arugula. I like the arugula, the little bit of the bitterness and the pepperiness of the arugula, I think pairs really nicely with the rest of the ingredients in this citrus beet salad. But if you don't have a taste for arugula yet, some baby spinach or some baby kale would also work wonderfully here. The nice thing about the arugula is it's high in some natural nitrates, very much like the beets are also high in some naturally occurring nitrates that can help relax our blood vessels and decrease blood pressure. Those naturally occurring nitrates can help increase blood flow to our brain and to our muscles. So really helpful for improving cognitive function and for improving performance or recovery after intense exercises. So win-win-win all around. Do you see why I'm loving beets? All right, so we've got our base for our salad is our arugula and our spinach. I've got a couple tablespoons of olive oil that I'm just gonna pour over my salad here. I have got a half, where did my recipe go? I've got a half teaspoon, yes, half teaspoon of salt. Again, skip this or reduce to a quarter teaspoon if you're looking to reduce your salt intake. And now I'm just gonna give this a nice little toss so that my greens are evenly coated. It's much easier to toss with tongs than it is with a spatula. So if you don't have some salad tongs, this might be a tool that you want to invest in. We're going to use tongs in another couple of our recipes too. So you can see that. All right. I didn't tell you how much arugula I used. So I used about a 5-ounce container. That's one of those small plastic containers that you see in the grocery store in the salad aisle. Not the big tub, but the smaller tubs. That's that 5-ounce tub. Okay, and I honestly chose to use less of the salt. Half teaspoon felt like a little bit much, so I think I went about a quarter teaspoon. Okay, so next for that recipe, we want to prepare some of our toppings. So our most important topping, because it is a citrus beet salad, are our roasted beets. So we've got 3 roasted beets. It's about a pound of beets that were roasted. We sliced the tops off already and the taproot. And now we're just gonna slice these to place on top of our salad. So I'm gonna cut these beets in half like this, and I am going to make some kind of half moon slices that I'm gonna toss into here. I love the contrast in the colors. You get the red and the green, very like Christmassy kind of. But red and green are opposite each other on the color scale, so they tend to complement each other. And I think one thing that we often don't think enough about when we're eating is the visual aspect of the food. We eat almost as much with our eyes as we do with our taste buds, and if food is visually appealing, it's more likely to appeal to the rest of our senses. And it's just a fun way to take care of yourself, add a little bit more joy into your day. There's no cons of having pretty food, and it doesn't take that much more time. Okay, so I've got my 3 beets nice and sliced. You could slice these smaller if you wanted smaller pieces. It does not have to be that size. That is totally a preference thing. Just gonna wipe off my fingers and my knife. That's why I've got my towel here. Next, we're going to we're going to peel this orange. So we're going to do something that's called supreming. It's just kind of it looks fancy, but it's actually a lot easier than it seems. And this is just a really easy way to get the rind off and get our orange into some slices. So I'm gonna start by slicing, and I guess I should remind everyone how we're holding our knife. We're pinching between our thumb and our first finger, wrapping fingers around the blade like so, okay? And anytime I've got a round or an unwieldy piece of produce, I'm gonna try to cut to a point where I can have a flat surface. So in this case, I'm gonna just slice off this bottom end here. So now I've got that nice flat surface, and I'm gonna slice off the top as well so I can see where I'm going. And when I'm supreming, I'm basically just taking my knife and I'm following the curve of the citrus down towards the cutting board, and I'm trying to get as much of this pith, so that's the white part that you're seeing here, off of the orange. Does not have to be perfect. That part is a little bit more bitter, and we're using this orange to add some delicious sweetness to this. So I want less of that bitter. That sweetness of the orange is going to help counter some of the bitterness in the beets. We're also, from this orange, getting some nice vitamin C. And I mentioned that the salad greens that I'm using here are, they have some spinach in them. Spinach is high in plant-based iron, and we can absorb iron better when we eat it with a source of vitamin C like our citrus. Okay, so you can see that I'm kind of following that pith, keeping my knife along the curve of the orange. And you can see it's not perfect. I still have a little bit of the pith on there. That's totally fine. Okay, last little bit. Okay, and now I am going to trim off this little bit here because I can. And then this all goes into my compost. All right, and now I've got my supremed orange, and I'm just gonna make some nice slices. Okay. And then I'm just gonna arrange my nice slices, thin slices, into my salad bowl here. I've got some other oranges that I sliced earlier. Those will go in there as well. I think that's looking pretty good. I've got some sliced avocado that we're gonna add into the mix for some healthy fats, some great fiber, some good magnesium as well. And I'm going to show you how I got to that sliced avocado. So I've got my small avocado here, pop out that stem. I'm taking my knife parallel to the cutting board, and I'm slicing the stem end in half until I feel some resistance from that pit. I'm going to spin the avocado around the knife until it gets back to where I started, and then I can twist. Voila, I've got my two halves of my avocado. And then I can take a cereal spoon, scoop out the pit like so. And then we're using some nice little slices here. So I'm gonna carefully hold my avocado as I make nice thin slices, being careful not to cut through the rind or the peel of the avocado. And then I can just take my spoon here and scoop them out and add a few more avocado slices, because who doesn't love avocado? All right, our other ingredients we've got here, we've got some mint. Okay, so I'm going for about a quarter cup of mint that has been minced. So I'm gonna gather together my pile of mint leaves. Okay, I'm just using the leaves, not the stems here. And how I like to work with these herbs, if I'm trying to get them in small pieces, they're minced, or sometimes you'll see recipes say chiffonade, is to just gather them into this little like pile and just try to kind of roll them up a little bit like a burrito. And then you can take the tip of your chef's knife, keep it on the cutting board as you make this nice rocking motion, thinly slicing through that roll. And as you cut, you're going to notice you probably need to use your non-knife holding hand to gather the leaves. So keep on gathering and then thinly slicing. And nothing has to be perfect here. All right, and then you can just kind of go back over, chop a couple times there. I'm looking for about a 1/4 cup, which I probably have a little bit more than that, so about that handful. And I'm just kind of garnishing this with that mint. Perfect. And I'm going to set aside the rest of this. You could skip the mint if you wanted to. If you don't have a taste for the mint at this point in time, it does add, I think, some nice flavor and it's kind of a surprising pairing. I think you'll be happy if you do use it. And then our final ingredient here. This is dukkha. It's a nut and seed and spice blend that's used a lot in Egyptian cooking. We've got almonds and hazelnuts and pistachios with some sesame seeds, fennel seeds, cumin, coriander, a little bit of salt, and some cayenne pepper. And we're going to use this as a garnish for our salad. So about a 1/4 of a cup over the top. And that's going to add some nice texture, some crunch. So you can kind of like a crouton would in a typical salad. All right, there you go. Beautiful. So we've got our absolutely gorgeous beet and citrus salad. This salad also goes really well with some tofu feta. I have a recipe on the website for you all on how to make that. Or I really love these Castle Vetrano, these green buttery olives. They, to me, mimic feta so well. Some of these on this salad would also be really delicious. All right, moving along, 2 recipes down. Moving on to our last beet recipe. I'm going to keep my cutting board on its messy side because it's just going to get stained again. Our next recipe, this is one that we make a lot here because it is one that I think has converted a lot of people to actually enjoying beets. We've made this at events with the Red Wings. We do this in our kids' cooking class. This is our sweet ginger beet and carrot slaw. And you start with 1 medium beet, so right here, that is raw, okay? And you grate it with 1 large carrot. So that's what you see here in this bowl. I'm going to show you how I got to this point, at least from the beet end. So, and you know what? I'm going to clear off some of this off of the cutting board because it's a little distracting. And I don't want mint in this application. It actually, honestly, would probably be fine, but I'm choosing not to include it this time. Okay, so I've got my raw beet. To get it to a place where I can grate it, I want to cut off, wipe the mint off my knife too. I'm going to cut off the stem end, okay? And then I'm going to cut off this taproot, right? And those go into the compost. I'm going to take my handy dandy vegetable peeler. I really like these Y vegetable peelers. I think they have a better grip and improve your dexterity when it comes to peeling. And I'm just going to peel off as much of this kind of brownish outer layer, so the skin of the beet, as I can. Again, that's where a lot of the bitterness is, and if I can remove that, I'm getting rid of some of that bitterness. And you're not losing too much nutrition. You're still getting a lot of fiber in the beets from like the beetroot itself. And again, the dark red color is really where you're getting those phytonutrients that are supporting decreased inflammation and improved blood flow and relaxation of our blood vessels. Okay, so you saw me just cut it in half as well. And then what you would do is use this box grater on this setting. So this is like the largest setting. There's several different sides to our box grater. This one, the smallest one, is going to be more for like if you're grating some ginger and you really want that really small. The other ones are more for like, this is for getting like long slices of things. This is what we want to use for grating our beets and for grating our large carrot. So you would just go back and forth over this, watch your knuckles so you don't get those on here because these can be sharp. And then you do 2 medium beets, 1 large carrot, and that's what gets you to this point. So that's our what's in our bowl. The rest of our ingredients that we need to prepare, we've got some scallions. We're gonna mince or slice, excuse me, not mince, slice 3 scallions. So I've got, well, can you see how stained my hands are just from touching that beet? Why I used the gloves when we were peeling. I'm gonna trim off these root hairs, okay? We don't want those, but we can use the whole rest of these green onions. When I'm working with green onions, I'm gonna inspect them for any kind of slimy or wilty greens, and I'm going to peel those parts off. I did that before class, so we're good there. I'm gonna keep the tip of my chef's knife on the cutting board, and I'm gonna make that nice thin rocking motion as I'm moving my knife down the length of the greens. And I'm going to use the whites and the greens. You can use both parts. One cool thing about green onions, if you slice just the green parts off and you leave the root hairs intact on the white part, you can put the bulb with the root hairs in a little glass of water and it'll sprout more greens that you can use again, which is kind of fun. So the green onions are adding some of that nice like sulfury onion flavor, pretty mild of that. They're adding those anti-inflammatory sulfur compounds as well. We're going to get those into our bowl. Okay, there we go. Got all those in there. And now we need to prepare another fun ingredient in this dish is ginger, fresh ginger. If you can, in this recipe, use the fresh ginger. It makes all the difference in the world. Fresh ginger is just a lot sweeter than the powdered ginger. It's really inexpensive, and it's a really nice way to add a good punch to these dishes. So we need about a 1-inch piece. So that's going to be about half of this piece of ginger. Okay, and I'm going to wipe my knife off. To peel it, we can do a couple things. You can use your veggie peeler. So you can take that. That works out really well. Okay, or you can use a spoon. So this is just a regular spoon for eating, cereal spoon. This tends to be my preference because I don't like using the veggie peeler that close to my fingers. But you do whatever feels comfortable for you. I also just kind of like the grip of the spoon a little bit better for this small application. Okay, so we've got these little knobs. The spoon, I think, also gets in there really nicely. So saying a lot of pros for the spoon method, but again, that veggie peeler works just fine. Okay, so we just want to get most of it off. I'm dyeing it red with the beets that are on my hand, and then you just want to trim off this kind of dried out end. Set that aside, and I am going to slice it in half just so I can get it to some smaller pieces. I like to thinly slice. We're going for a mince here. So mince is just getting into really small pieces. We use it a lot with garlic, and I'll show you that later. And ginger, because they're really pungent, they have very strong flavors, and we want that flavor to be able to disperse throughout the dish. And by getting it into really small pieces, we can help make that happen. So I thinly sliced that. I'm going to gather that into a pile, keep the tip of my knife on the cutting board as I just kind of go over that pile in a rocking motion. And then I'm gonna use the non-knife blade side of my knife to gather that pile back together. And we just continue to go over this pile until it's the size that you want. Some people like larger minces because they like more ginger flavor in each bite. Some people prefer smaller minces because they find that a little too intense, and they want a milder ginger flavor. So you mince until it is the size that your heart desires, and then add it into your bowl. Not only is this ginger adding some nice sweetness and a little bit of pungency to our dish here, it is also adding a compound called gingerol, and that is a very potent anti-inflammatory that actually turns off one of our body's inflammation pathways and turns on some of our internal antioxidant production. And remember, antioxidants are those compounds that prevent our cells from getting damaged. They basically are like when you see lemon juice put on an apple to prevent browning, that's oxidation. So those antioxidant compounds are kind of preventing that reaction from happening to our cells. Okay, so I feel like I'm getting pretty close to the size that I want here, and I'm gonna pick up my knife and show you a closer. That's the mince that I like for this recipe. Again, you do you and choose what works well for your purposes. 1 inch of ginger minced is a little over a tablespoon of ginger. So I know like that's a weird unit of measure because sometimes ginger pieces are really thick, sometimes they're really thin. Just over a tablespoon of minced ginger is what you're looking for. Okay, last ingredients here. We've got 3 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil. I've got 1.5 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar. And then I have got 3 tablespoons of fresh squeezed orange juice. It's that bright orange yellow color. That orange juice adds a really nice pop of sweetness to this as well. And then I've got a 1/4 cup of, these are sunflower seeds. I almost said sesame seeds. Sunflower seeds to add some crunch and some healthy fats, a little bit of vitamin E as well, which is helpful for immune function. So I'm giving this a nice stir until everything is evenly coated. And voila, you have your beautiful, fresh, sweet ginger and carrot and beet slaw. This is great on top of a grain bowl. I've had it stuffed into a wrap. I have just put it on top of salad, eaten it just like this. You could toss some chickpeas in here for some protein as well. It's really versatile. And again, this is a recipe that I think gets a lot of people to try beets and start to see their culinary applications and start to enjoy them as a food that they might want to start incorporating more often. So give this one a try if you're hesitant about beets, and then let me know what you think about it. All right, we are gonna shift away from beets. So I'm gonna clear my cutting board here, flip that over, get rid of some of our excess ingredients that are on the counter here. So we have a fresh, clean space to be working from. All right. Our next recipe, we're gonna focus on eggplant. Eggplant, I think, is something folks are familiar with. They can recognize, they know what eggplant is in the grocery store. But often we get a lot of questions of like, okay, what do I do with the eggplant? So we're gonna talk about that. So first and foremost, let's look at, this is a large eggplant. Our recipe calls for 2 medium eggplants. When I'm selecting an eggplant at the farmer's market or the grocery store, I want to look for one that is really nice and shiny. So you see this eggplant is really beautiful. It's dark purple. I want it to be firm and have no like sunken spots. There are all different kinds of eggplants. There are green eggplants, white eggplants. There are purpley pink ones. There are pink striped ones. There are long ones. There are short and stout ones. Eggplants come in all sorts of sizes and colors. So whatever color that eggplant is supposed to be, you want it to be bright and vibrant, and you want the skin to be nice and shiny without any of those soft spots. And again, you want it to be firm and not mushy. So this is one large eggplant. I said our recipe calls for 2 medium, and we need to get it into 3-inch pieces because we're going to steam it. We're making a saucy steamed eggplant with some Asian-inspired spices. This is what it's going to look like when we're done steaming, but I want to show you how we got there first. So let's focus on the cutting board here. We're going to slice off this stem end of the eggplant. Again, this is a rounded vegetable. I want to get to my flat surfaces. I'm going to slice off the blossom end. And you can see like that's where the blossom was, the flower blossom. Okay, and then this is still really unwieldy, so I'm going to cut it in half. It's pretty large, okay? And now I'm going to set that sliced side down on the cutting board. I'm going to cut it in half. And I am going to take my half and I'm going to slice it down towards the cutting board again in half. So I'm getting these 2 nice long planks, okay? Now, these would be great for grilling if you wanted to grill, but that's not the application we're doing today. So I'm going to keep them stacked on top of each other. I am going to then put them down on that wide flat side that was just cut, and I'm going to slice down until I get pieces about this size. Okay, and I'm going to do that down across my whole eggplant. So I'm looking for about 3-inch pieces. So something like that. These ones are a little bit wide, so I might stack those on top of each other and do that another slice. Same thing on this side. Looking like, okay. You don't have to peel them. The peel is where it's that dark purple color. We're getting a lot of anthocyanins. Those anthocyanins are really helpful for cognitive function and decreasing neuroinflammation. So we want to leave that peel on here. All right, so we've got our eggplant in our 3-inch pieces. Our next step is to place it into a saucepan. This is a 3-quart saucepan. Okay, and I've got this nice steamer basket in here. Steamer baskets are so helpful for preparing vegetables. Steaming is one of the best ways to preserve a lot of the nutrients within vegetables, like cook them. As long as we're not over steaming them or steaming them to death, we're still preserving a lot of the nutrients, particularly like broccoli. We talk a lot about the sulforaphane content in broccoli, which sulforaphane is a really potent phytonutrient that can help reduce risk of cancer, decrease inflammation, really potent antioxidant. Steaming broccoli using something like this is the best way to preserve that compound. Similarly, in our eggplant, steaming it can help us preserve some of the phytonutrients, the flavonoids that are going to have that anti-inflammatory impact. So to steam, you place your steamer basket in your saucepan. We're going to use about an inch of water in the bottom of the saucepan, place our steamer basket inside. I wouldn't put more than about this amount. So that was about 1/4 of that large eggplant. So maybe half of your medium eggplant into the steamer basket at a time. I'm going to place my lid on here and we're going to let this steam for 5 to 8 minutes until we get to this consistency. So see like the difference. This is really firm and spongy. This is really, really soft and pliable. And that's what I'm looking for, that kind of steamed look, right? We could grill those pieces as well. That's another way to cook this. I wanted to show steaming because when we talk a lot about disease prevention, One thing, and when it comes to cooking that can be really helpful is to focus more on our moist heat cooking methods instead of our high temperature dry heat cooking methods like grilling, because when we have that dry, high heat, we're forming compounds called advanced glycolated end products, which have connections to increased risk for diabetes and cancer and cognitive health issues. So I'm not saying never grill. It is a wonderful way to prepare veggies and other foods. I'm just saying if you have those conditions or you're looking to prevent those conditions, focusing some more of your cooking on some of our moist heat methods like our steaming or our braising can be helpful in reducing your exposure to some of those compounds. So, all right, we've got our steamed eggplant, two medium eggplants that were cut into 3-inch pieces and were steamed. We need to make a dressing for this. So our dressing, like I said, we're using some Asian inspired flavors. So I've got 1 tablespoon of coconut aminos. It's a low sodium soy sauce alternative made from coconut flour nectar. I've got a couple teaspoons of sesame oil. That's going to add a really robust kind of umami savoriness to here. I have got a teaspoon of unseasoned rice vinegar. Unseasoned just means unsweetened. Okay, that's what we're going for here. And then I've got a tablespoon of minced ginger, fresh ginger. You could use garlic, or you could use ginger powder here if you wanted to. Again, I just really, really love that sweetness. And so I'm opting for that fresh ginger. I've got a half teaspoon of red pepper flakes. If you don't love spice, you can omit this. And then I've got a half teaspoon of garlic powder, or you could use 2 cloves of minced garlic. And we're just gonna give this a little whisk. And then I am gonna get a handy dandy spatula, and we are just gonna pour this right on top of our steamed eggplant. And this is where we're using those tongs again. So I'm taking those tongs, this to toss things. Tongs are a really helpful tool for tossing. And I'm just tossing these pieces of eggplant until I feel like everything's fairly well coated. And there you go. So you have a beautiful veggie side dish that didn't heat up your kitchen too much and is using some gorgeous summer produce, and you're getting some bright flavors. You can garnish this with a couple teaspoons of sesame seeds, and you can also utilize our scallions, which I'll chop some of this too. I really like this eggplant on top of some brown rice with some sauteed tofu or tempeh. It's really, really nice that way. I'll often just eat it as it is, as a nice snack as well. But it's just a really great side dish. All right, so there you go. You've got your saucy steamed eggplant. All right, ready for our last recipe. Last but not least, we are going to focus on kohlrabi. Give you a little bit better view of the cutting board there. Okay, so kohlrabi is in the brassica family, so it's in the same family as kale and collards and cabbage. And this is what kohlrabi looks like. It's this nice little bulb. I'm gonna put it on the cutting board. You might be able to see a little bit better there. So we've got this beautiful bulb. It's basically a swollen stem. If you have eaten broccoli stems, it's a very similar flavor. And then we've got these beautiful leaves that are very similar to kale leaves. So you can use the whole part of this kohlrabi. This is a like early season kohlrabi, so they tend to be on the smaller side. They tend to come in bunches with their leaves, and they're a little bit more tender. There are also kohlrabis that are storage kohlrabis that might be the size of a melon or a head of cabbage. They're more like this size, and those tend to be a little bit on the tougher side and are better in applications for like cooking, so like roasting, whereas these smaller, more tender kohlrabi are absolutely delicious raw. You can totally cook them. You can definitely roast them, or and blend them into soups and stews, or eat them just like you would like a roasted broccoli. But my preference is to eat them raw because they're so sweet and so crunchy. So I'm going to show you a recipe that uses them raw. We're going to do a carrot and kohlrabi slaw that was inspired from a recipe in Bryant Terry's Vegetable Kingdom cookbook. Great cookbook if you need an idea. So how do we get from this to this, which is what we're going to use in our recipe? First of all, we start by trimming off our greens. Now, you can use these greens just like you would kale. So saute them. You can slice them up really thin and massage them with some salt for a raw kale salad. They're absolutely delicious. The bulb here, I'm going to trim off this stem end, or excuse me, that's the root end. And I should say too, when we're selecting our kohlrabi, we want to make sure that our bulbs are firm and our greens are not wilty and bright green, very fresh looking. Okay. And you can, for storing kohlrabi, it's actually ideal to cut the leaves off of the kohlrabi and store the leaves and the bulb separately. Both of those will last longer when they're stored separately. Just put them in plastic bags in your refrigerator. We didn't talk about storage for the eggplant. Also plastic bag in your refrigerator, and your beets, the same thing. If they come with their greens on them, trim those greens off of the root. Store the roots separately from the greens. Use the greens up within a week. Your beets are going to store in your veggie drawer for several weeks to months. Same thing with your kohlrabi bulbs, okay? All right, so we've got the root end trimmed off of our kohlrabi here. I'm going to pull off some of these stem bits, and I'm going to peel it. So I'm going to use my handy dandy Y-shaped vegetable peeler. Go around the horn here. And again, doesn't have to be perfect. You can eat the skin too. All right, and now I'm gonna trim off my stem side. And then to get it into these nice little slices here, I'm gonna cut my kohlrabi bulb in half. I'm going to cut it in half again, and then keeping the tip of my chef's knife on the cutting board, I'm going to make really thin slices, just like that. Okay, and when you get to this end, if it gets a little scary close to your fingers, just take that piece off and eat it. Nice little snack. All right, into the cutting board, or into the bowl here. These are going to go. So our recipe calls for 1 pound of small kohlrabi. They're typically bunched by the pound. You might see like 3 or 4 small, those are about tennis ball size pieces, or bulbs, excuse me, of kohlrabi. So that's about what you're looking for to get to your 1 pound. So we've got our kohlrabi prepared. Set that aside. Next, we need to prepare carrots. We're using 1 pound of carrots that we're going to get into ribbons. So this is a washed carrot. I'm going to cut off the stem end and the point. And then I am going to not worry about peeling it, but I'm going to get this into ribbons. So you can lay this on the cutting board, and just getting into ribbons is just basically peeling. And I'm going to turn the carrot as I do my ribbons, just going to go all the way around. And you're just going to do this until you hit that core of the carrot, and I'll show you once we get there, because that core is kind of woody, and it's fine when we're just biting into the carrot as a whole, but to get a whole ribbon of it is a little much. So we're gonna just keep going, almost there. Okay, so that's kind of like that. You can see it's a little bit lighter color. That's like my core. I'm gonna set this aside. You can slice off these ends, eat them, use them with that beet hummus that we made earlier. But here are our beautiful carrot ribbons. We're gonna add that to our bowl with our other carrot ribbons. And I'm gonna grab a large bowl here for tossing everything together. So I'm gonna add my 2 pounds of carrot ribbons to a large bowl with my, excuse me, 1 pound of carrot ribbons, not 2 pounds. 1 pound of carrot ribbons with my 1 pound of sliced kohlrabi. And I am going to make a nice dressing for this. So our dressing, we're gonna start with 1 clove of minced garlic. So I'm gonna go here on the cutting board. These were tiny cloves, so I have 2. So, but about 1 clove of minced garlic, I'm slicing off that root end, smashing down on them to peel like we did for our beet hummus. And doing that again here. So kohlrabi, one of the distinguishing nutritional features of kohlrabi is that it's got a decent amount of vitamin C, which is surprising. I know we think about citrus fruit and maybe peppers and strawberries, but we don't think about our brassicas, like our cabbages and kohlrabi, as being high in vitamin C, but they are. And that vitamin C is super important for collagen formation, which is critical for wound healing and skin integrity, skin health in general, and also really important for immune function. Okay, this is a little tricksy piece of garlic. So there we go. All right, so now I'm going to slice, just like I did with the ginger. This is how I prefer to mince. You might have a different method, but I just like to get in little slices that I can gather into a pile and then go back over with my rocking motion. Try always to use the non-blade side of your knife when you're gathering. Scraping the blade side on the cutting board dulls it. And dull knives are not safe, and they make cutting actually take a lot longer. So sharp knife is a safe knife and will help you be more efficient in the kitchen. All right, I've got my 1 clove of minced garlic. Pretty good. Again, you just mince until your heart's happy with the size. And we're going to put this into our dressing bowl. And I've got a few lingering carrot bits from our ribbons, and that's okay because this dressing is going right on top of the carrots. All right, I've got 1.5 tablespoons of ginger that was already minced. That's going in here. I've got a tablespoon of maple syrup. I have 2 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil. I've got a half cup of that unseasoned rice vinegar. So again, we're using some kind of Asian inspired flavors in here. You'll see that rice vinegar used a lot in Asian inspired recipes. And then I've got a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. All right, our last ingredient for our dressing, I need to get 2 tablespoons of lime juice. That's about the juice of 1 lime. So I like to cut this lime in half across the equator here. I'm going to use my citrus juicer You place the cut side down. I know that looks counterintuitive, but cut side down, and then we're gonna squeeze that into here. So the rice vinegar and the citrus are adding some nice brightness that I think pairs really well with the sweetness of the carrot and the kohlrabi. It just really makes this dish sing. Okay, so I've got that. I'm gonna use my tongs, and this is not usually what you'd use, but just tongs just to mix that together a little bit. I'm gonna toss the dressing on top of my veggies here. I'm gonna give this a nice little toss with those tongs. Till it's nice and evenly coated. And then we are going to garnish with 2 sliced scallions. It's about a 1/4 cup of cilantro leaves. If you're someone who doesn't love the taste of cilantro, go ahead and omit it. But I think this adds, if you don't have the gene where it tastes like soap, it adds not only some nice visual contrast, but does add some nice brightness and pairs really well with that lime. And then we've got some peanuts. So this is a 1/2 cup of peanuts. You can use them halved like this, or you can crush them. And you're just going to give that a nice little toss again to get those evenly incorporated. And voila, you've got your nice, beautiful carrot and kohlrabi slaw. The kohlrabi would also be beautiful with that beet hummus that we made earlier. So you can just slice that into sticks or use it with regular hummus. I like it sometimes sliced and put on a sandwich for some nice little crunch, or just eat it plain as it is for a lovely snack. Those are all of our recipes. So I'm hoping that one of those inspired you to try something a little bit new and different. I want to share just a couple more slides, and then I will wrap it up and let you get going with your evening. Just wanted to let everyone know, if you're in Michigan, our lifestyle medicine team here, based in Southeast Michigan, has a wide variety of lifestyle medicine classes. So I mentioned all of the different pillars, which you can see here on the screen. This class focuses primarily on that healthful eating pillar. We have group classes that focus on all 6 pillars and provide practical skills and tips and resources to help you start adopting some of the lifestyle changes that will help prevent or reverse chronic illnesses. We have a general foundations of lifestyle medicine class that's for anybody with any chronic health condition. And then we do have some topic specific classes for folks who are in cancer survivorship, folks looking to manage hypertension, or anyone who's navigating menopause or dealing with IBS. We do have some specific classes for those topics, and more classes for more topics in development. If you want more information about those, if you go to the website that you see here on the screen, trinityhealthmi.org/THAA lifestyle medicine, or you can call that number that you see on the screen as well, if you're excited to register for any of those classes. Those classes, just a note, we do bill insurance for those classes. So there may be a cost if your insurance doesn't cover that. So always good to check with your insurance. We bill medical nutrition therapy codes, so check with your insurance for coverage of those. And then a final reminder, if you are a colleague and you are joining us, you do get those Live Your Whole Life points. So please email us so you can get your 250 points. And just again, want to thank everyone for the time that you spend engaging with these classes. It is such a joy for me to teach these, and I appreciate all of your feedback and recommendations on how we can improve the series. So if you have questions, if you make these recipes, or if you have thoughts on how we can make this class better for you, please email us at lifestylemedicine@trinity-health.org, and I will get back to you very quickly. Thanks so much. Have a wonderful night. Happy cooking and take good care.